Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today's topic might be a little bit more on the controversial side, or at least my thoughts on it might be, because I'm not sure the majority are necessarily going to agree with me, but I've kind of thought about this a lot, and yeah, I'm pretty set on where I stand. What inspired this was I was on Reddit the other night, as I do. I spend far too much time on there because I'm lonely and bored. It's not even funny. And I saw this post about a guy who was like kind of being a bit douchey about the fact that he got a girl pregnant and she didn't want to keep the baby. So she like had the baby because he wanted her to, and then she left and was like, I don't want anything to do with this. And he was like kind of publicly shaming her for it. And I was like, that's an absolute douchebag thing to do. And then on that post, there was like a whole other post linked to an old legal advice post from like 5 years ago, basically the same story but with like more details. And it really kind of got me thinking about sort of like parental rights in general, and or rather like the ability to give them up. And at the minute, I do think there is a massive double standard between what men and women can do in terms of deciding if they want to continue a pregnancy. And I don't think that's fair. And I think this is something that people may find a little controversial and not necessarily like my opinion on. But I kind of want to talk about it and share my thoughts and then maybe open a dialogue about it. I figured we could look at these couple of Reddit posts to get like an example of sort of one side of things, and then I'll kind of talk about my thoughts overall and then kind of pose a few questions for you guys to discuss in the comments and kind of carry on the conversation if that's good. So the original post from 5 years ago was posted in r/legal advice with the title, I got a girl pregnant and she wanted to get an abortion, but I didn't want that. She ended up not getting one, but now she's not involved at all. We weren't in a serious relationship when she got pregnant. She's never met our son. Even after the birth, she had no desire to see him. We went to court to figure custody and support could be figured out, and weird wording, and I have 100% full legal and physical custody. Her name is on the birth certificate, but she has no custody and no right to visitation to make things like medical or educational decisions. She didn't want any of that. Every month she pays 125% of the court-ordered child support. She says that if I ever marry someone who wants to adopt him, she will agree, but until then she'll pay support. It's been this way since our son was born. I'm raising our son all on my own. He's 18 months old now, and he's never met her, and I don't even have any photos of her even. That's horrible wording. This man cannot write. Sorry. I'm burned out and hate being a single parent. I love my son, but I resent him. My family tries to help when they can, but I do it most of the time. I've never hurt or neglect him, but I am exhausted all the time. I tried to go to court to give her split custody, but because she wanted an abortion and I didn't, and she made it very clear she would never be involved after the birth, and because we went to court when he was 6 months old, but because already went after he was born and agreed on things, and now she pays more support than is court ordered, the judge said he can't force her to look after him. This is so horribly written, I apologise. I haven't seen her in almost a year, and the last I heard she had a tummy tuck and laser stretch marks treatment and is working at a gym. She also told her friends and family she's an egg donor and not a mother. She is a deadbeat mum and the court won't do anything and is forcing me to struggle as a single parent. Do I have any legal remedies here? This is the most ridiculous, disgusting thing I've ever heard. She didn't want to be involved. She's paying more than her fair share of what she should. You forced her into this. You can't force someone to be a parent. And then a very, very similar situation was brought up literally just a couple of weeks ago with this guy posting on TikTok with his baby with the caption, she wanted an abortion, but I didn't let her and she left us. Red flag, red flag, red flag. Now I see red flags here, but it's with the man, not the woman who left because she didn't want to be a parent. There's like some of the comments on this post as well raised some really, really good points. Like this person says, forcing a woman to carry a baby is just no, just true. This person says, I wonder how it was even possible to force her to carry it to term. Like requesting an abortion should only require the woman's consent since it's her body being affected. A partner's agreement should be irrelevant and unnecessary. It makes me wonder if they're from a country that requires the partner's approval or something. And then this person said, and this is the concerning thing. The US has places that will deny abortions without confirmation from the father. There are also places that will deny assigned females at birth hysterectomies, saying they might regret it later on when they have a husband, and some doctors might require a husband or boyfriend's approval. Not saying it's the US, just saying it doesn't have to be some country with no equal rights laws. It's absolutely disgusting. This is also something that I've kind of faced. They won't let me have any kind of like permanent child stopping measures in place, not necessarily a hysterectomy, but they won't let me do anything permanent in the UK because I'm not married and I don't already have kids, and I'm not over 40. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so I come into this from the perspective of a child-free by choice woman. I don't want kids. I never want kids. I'll never have children. Simple as that. If I was ever pregnant, I would not want to be pregnant, and I would not continue a pregnancy. And that's kind of my personal perspective and where I'm coming from. I also believe fully that if a woman doesn't want to continue a pregnancy, then no one should be able to force her to do that. I think it's her body, her choice, absolutely. What I do think is potentially a little controversial, that the laws don't currently agree with, and I know a lot of people don't agree with, but what I think is fair is that I think for the same amount of time as a woman has to decide whether she wants to continue a pregnancy or not, I think the father of the baby should have that same period to decide whether he wants to be a parent or not. And I do think he should be allowed to opt out within a certain amount of time. You know, like say a woman can have an abortion up to like 18 weeks, for example. I think from finding out the person's pregnant, the father also should have 18 weeks to decide whether he wants to become a parent or not. And then either, you know, keep the rights and, you know, be forced to support and help the child for the next however many, like 18 years. Or I think he should have the right to give up his parental rights and say, no, I don't want this child, I don't want to be a part of this. And the woman kind of should take that into account as well when having the baby. I think things like forced child support is a little bit gross, to be honest. Just because a woman decides she wants to continue a pregnancy, I don't think that means a man should have to pay for it if he doesn't want to be a parent. And I know that's controversial, but I don't think anyone should be forced to look after a kid that they don't want. I think every child being brought into the world should be completely wanted, at least by one parent. And I don't think you should be forced to look after a child financially or emotionally if you don't want it. And I mean, the same goes for the woman in this post here. Like, the fact that she even went through with the pregnancy just because this guy wanted it is like, she didn't have to do that. And I think it's really commendable that she went through the pregnancy and put her body through that just to keep this man that she barely knew happy and give him the child that he wanted. I think it's absolutely disgusting that he's now shaming her for things like, you know, wanting to get her body back with a tummy tuck and getting stretch marks removed and stuff. I think it's disgusting that he's shaming her for not wanting to be a parent. Like, she has that right and it's okay. I didn't plan this video out, so I'm worried that it's a little bit rambly, but like, there are so many issues as well, because a lot of people, when I make kind of like pro-choice videos and stuff, a lot of people, mostly men, surprisingly, say in the comments things like, oh, well, if you consent to sex, you consent to pregnancy. And I'm like, no, you really, really don't. They're completely different things. It's like saying, just because I go out in public, then I'm consenting to catching a cold or a flu or COVID or anything like that, and then like denying me treatment for it once I'm ill because I consented to getting ill because I went out in public, and therefore I don't deserve treatment and I should stay ill forever. Do you know what I mean? It's the same thing. Consenting to sex is just consenting to sex. It's not consenting to pregnancy. And I think that's true for both and any people involved, whether they're, you know, I guess whether they have like male or female parts, like it doesn't really matter. I guess I just find it really bizarre that like my, I guess, viewpoint kind of all revolves around the fact that I think all children should be wanted, or all children being brought into the world should be wanted, and it shocks me that that's like a controversial opinion. Well, like, no, I think most people would agree with that, but a lot of people are really narrow-minded and think that means that all children are wanted, and they're really, really not. It's absolutely okay to not want kids and to like take precautions to make sure that doesn't happen and to stop pregnancies before it becomes a sentient being, you know? I think that's absolutely fine. I do understand things like child support to some extent, and I do think it's important in many cases. For example, like if a couple have decided to have a child together and they've made that decision together and they both said, yes, we want to get pregnant, yes, we want to continue this pregnancy, yes, we want to bring a baby into the world, then I do think it's both of the parents' responsibilities to look after the baby, both financially and emotionally and physically, you know, because they've made that choice. But I don't think that choice should be forced upon anyone, including men who, you know, don't want to be parents. I think kind of forcing someone to pay child support for a kid that they never wanted isn't really fair. And I get that some people will be like, oh, well, you know, if a guy had sex with a woman and he got her pregnant, it's his responsibility. But why should it have to be? I know it sounds kind of heartless, but I think like if the father wants to opt out, he should be able to. And I know some people will be like, well, that's unfair for the woman because now you're forcing her to raise a baby alone and support a baby alone and this sort of thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's something she needs to take into account when she's deciding if she wants to continue the pregnancy or not. I don't know. It's like, we always say as pro-choicers, like, oh, you can't force someone to do something with their body and their life that they don't want to do. Like, it's not fair to force women to continue a pregnancy if they don't want it. And, someone else's, like, religious beliefs, for example, trying to change abortion laws is unfair because those people campaigning for that, like pro-lifers and whatever, are trying to assert their religious or political beliefs to control another person's body and their life and their future. And I kind of feel like a woman saying, well, I'm pregnant and I want to continue this, and therefore you as a man don't get a say and should pay for this and should support us and should do this. Like, you're also kind of using your own beliefs to change someone's life and force them into doing something they don't want, and I don't think that's fair either. Maybe I'm selfish, but I know that I as a woman would never want to be forced into a pregnancy or raising a child that I didn't want, and so I don't think it's fair for me to say that it's okay for that to be forced on men. That said, I don't think, like, it's fair if, a child's, like, 4 years old and it's had both parents supporting it or whatever, and then I don't think it's fair for, like, a man or the woman to just be like, oh, actually, change my mind, I'm done. I don't think that's fair, because at that point you've made the decisions already and you need to take responsibility for that kid and do what's right for it and support it. But I think within, like, a certain period of, it's the same as a woman has. From finding out you're pregnant, you have a set period of time before that bundle of cells becomes a sentient being. You have a certain period of time to decide whether, like, oh yes, I want to continue this pregnancy, or no, I don't. And I think it's only kind of fair for a man from, finding out a woman's pregnant with his kid if he has the same period of time to sort of opt out and say, I don't want to be a father. I don't want to be a part of this pregnancy. I don't want to raise a baby, Maybe I'm selfish and maybe I'm cynical, but I don't understand who really benefits from forcing someone to be a parent when they don't want to be, or be financially responsible for a child that they don't want. I don't think it's fair on anyone, really. That kid's just going to grow up feeling like they're a burden and an obligation to a person. The person who doesn't want the kid is going to, live their lives with someone reliant on them that they never wanted. I guess maybe the other partner might benefit because they're getting financial support, but I don't know. I feel like if you decide to have a baby, that's your responsibility, whether you're the man or the woman. I'm shocked that in this, like, original post, the legal advice one, I'm shocked that this woman was even paying more child support than she had to. That's, like, above and beyond what she needed to do. I would honestly say, like, I don't even think she needs to be paying child support at all. She didn't want the pregnancy. He kind of talked her into it and forced her into it. Yeah, I don't know. But like I say, this is just kind of my opinion, and I know a lot of people might not agree with this, and a lot of people might not like this viewpoint from me. And I think as well, some people might say, like, it's not a feminist viewpoint, but I think it is, because it is about equality and equity for all and giving everyone the same opportunities to opt in or out of a pregnancy. It's about equality in that way, and I think sometimes the feminist thing to do is to stand up for men when they're not getting, like, a good deal, if that makes sense, when they are kind of suffering or struggling or whatever. Like, I've always said that I think family courts are often quite biased against men, and I do think that's changing, and I do think there has been a lot of good progress, but it's still not where it should be. I will always kind of, like, stand up for, fathers who want more rights to get those rights when they deserve them, but I also think it's fair for men to be able to opt out of pregnancy in the same way that women can, and I don't know, that's just something that I kind of believe quite strongly. Okay, so editing me here, and there's actually a really, really important point here that I completely missed talking about for some reason. I think it's important to remember that in the current system that we have, in many, many countries, including many parts of America, abortion isn't free and easy to access for a lot of women. So in these cases, if you just give men these rights to opt out of pregnancy without also allowing women, like, the actual choice to get an abortion when and if they need it, then the only people who are going to be suffering are the women. So if you don't give women abortion rights, but you still allow men to opt out of pregnancy, then the only people who are going to suffer there are the women, because then they're going to be forced to continue with pregnancies and not get child support from the fathers. So what I'm saying is, in order for what kind of like I think is fair to work, you also need to make sure that women first, or at least people with uteruses, first have all the abortion rights that they need. This won't work otherwise, and it will just end up with more women suffering. It will end up with more working class people suffering. It will also end up with more people of colour suffering unfairly and disproportionately. And that's what I think is really important to remember. I'm kind of talking about like ideal world here, where everyone should be able to opt out of pregnancy if and when they need to. But in order to do that, first you need to make sure abortion rights are there for the people who need it. Does that make sense? So please don't think I'm kind of overlooking that. It wasn't intentional. I kind of assumed it was a given when I was speaking in this video, but while I'm editing I've realised it's not, and it does need saying, I think. So yeah, just throwing that in there. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm rambling, I probably am, but that's sort of my thoughts on this. I thought it was an interesting kind of question, and you know, should men be able to opt out of being fathers? Should men have the same sort of abortion rights as women, if that makes sense? Like, I don't think it's fair for a man to force a woman to have an abortion. I don't think it's fair for a man to force a woman to continue a pregnancy, but I also don't think it's fair for a woman to force a man to be responsible for a baby he doesn't want. And same the other way around. I don't think it's fair for a man to force a woman to be responsible for a baby she doesn't want. That's my conclusion. That's where I'm at with this. And I kind of like to pass this over to you guys and hear your thoughts. And like, what do you think about the Reddit post that we read about the guy wanting kind of women to take more responsibility for the babies that they didn't want? What do you think about like men kind of having an opt-out in pregnancy for a certain period of time? What do you think about kind of like child support issues in general, and the sort of financial support that sort of sometimes is forced on people with kids? And what do you think about kind of like how family courts and stuff in general treat men and women and the differences between them? And do you think there are any differences? Do you think something needs to change? Where are you at with that? I don't know. But yeah, thank you for watching today. Thank you for letting me ramble. I'm sorry, I'm still a little bit out of it at the minute. It's Christmas isn't such a good time for me, and I struggle a bit, and especially after what happened last year. I don't know, I guess I'm in like a weirdly vulnerable position, and I'm a little bit lonely at the minute, and things are a little bit hard. So I'm not quite feeling myself, and I'm finding filming a little bit hard at the minute, but thank you for your patience and sticking with me, and thank you for being here and watching today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. But for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again really soon.